Good, excellent. Hopefully the book of face will behave this evening. It's always helpful. I can see we've got some people watching already, which is lovely. So thank you very much. Let me just fiddle that around. Good evening, Lynette. Hello, Lacey. Good evening, Pam. Welcome. Welcome. Sorry about the noise. Something deciding to be a nuisance on the motorway, which is a reasonable distance away from the house. Good evening, Hazel. Thank you for watching. Good evening, Michelle. Hello, Anya. Good evening, Sheila. I am very well, Anya. How are you, my darling? And has your crafty mojo decided to return, or is it still gone walkabouts? I do feel for you. It does happen. It's very, very sad when it does. Bonsoir, Michelle. Thank you very much. Good evening, Jan. Hello, Kirsty. Hello, Karen. So for those of you that don't know, Karen Mortiston is the owner of Charmed Cards and Crafts, which is used to be based in at a part of central and South London, very close to where I was brought up. I was brought up near Beckenham, and her shop has been around for ages, and I've probably shopped with it off and on now for approximately maybe 10 plus years. I used to buy Graphic 45 back in the day. Well, I use lots of Graphic 45. So her service is amazing and fantastic, and I would wholeheartedly recommend it if you can. And she always puts a little treat in her boxes. Well, she does for me, so I'm assuming she does for others. So I always get a Nescafe hot drink, a Biscoff biscuit, and a very nice thank you, and a handwritten message, which I just think is just lovely for a small company. And it's testament to them that I am still shopping with them. It is indeed a very small world. Very, very small world. So let's just move some of this shenanigans out of the way, because I don't really want paint on those. There will be my usual amount of painting this evening, I'm sorry to say, but hey ho, it wouldn't be alive for me without lots of painting. Oh, I have got that up there. So yeah, it's a brilliant shop, absolutely. Anyway, yeah, it is, absolutely. So I have a Tim Holtz Ideology house. I have no idea if you can still get them. Let me see if I can get that in camera. That's all. There we go. Oh yes, just about. Right, moving further away from me than I'm not often. So let's just move those out of the way. Now we're too far away. So hopefully you can see that. And I'm continuing my mission to use up what I have, because I've got way too much stuff, and courtesy of Samperia, it grows far too quickly. So that's already part of life, isn't it? Anyway, we're going to do a bit of altering, at least on the outside of this. So, and I thought we might do a technique that you won't see me do that often, I think, but it's one that I quite like. And then we've got another vote for I Love Charmed Cards and Crafts, a fabulous shop. So this is a rough surface, so I won't need to prime it, and this is nougat. I know it says Torrentino, that's because I've had it for ages. The new packaging will say nougat. I hate to say it, but that's what they are. And we're just going to give, we've got several layers of paint to do, because we're going to be doing some distressing, hey, but without using brown. Well, I don't think that counts as brown. And I can yes, Carol, you are absolutely correct. We have way too much stuff, and then we see something new, and then we have to have it. Good evening, Jill. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I trust that you are well. So let's see how long it is going to be before I end up with icky, sticky, mucky hands. There we are. I'm not worried about the edges being paler. There we are. So we're going to do some distressing with you know, because I want a house that looks a bit like worn, that it's been sort of through the mill, and it's had several layers of paint added onto it over the years, and the paint has worn off and in areas and been repainted, and yeah, just some different different technique as much as anything else. Cool. There we are. Yeah. So of course there are lots of places where you'll be able to get the Silent Sea collection, but supporting your local favourite retailer is for me the most important thing. Right, let's just do that bottom, because you can't have an unpainted. No, definitely not very long to paint your fingers. Not very long at all till I'm going to have painty fingers. Yeah. It'll be worse when I get the moulded pieces out, because we are going to have some moulds. There we are. Good. Let's just put that in there and grab a heat gun off the floor. So I've got the conservatory doors open today. It was very warm earlier on today, so I had to have the doors open. There we are. I should behave and shut that pot of paint, but hey ho, hey ho. There we are. So how is everyone? Are we all well? Are we enjoying the nice weather? Is it nice in your parts of the world? I know for some parts of the UK some unpleasant weather, so heavy thunderstorms were forecast. Never good, never good. There is only one way that you can do a live with paints and things, and that is to dry. And then I pick a project that's got lots of layers, but there we are. It certainly wouldn't be me without painty hands. You know, things are meant to be picked up and touched. We were given fingers long before we had paintbrushes, and sometimes it's just easier when you've got nooks and crannies to get into to pick things up and handle them. It's just easier. There is no frills and frills with my approach to life. I spent my working life as a surgeon wearing gloves. I have no intention, unless I'm using something toxic, of spending my retirement wearing gloves. It's been lovely in London. I've had sun, but it's not been very warm. I think, yeah, the temperature at one point last week was -3 overnight. How wrong is that? And it's nice to hear that it's been lovely in Scotland as well. So let's just get this. This needs to be properly dry before I can add the next layer. Otherwise, all that would happen is that we'll shift colours around when we don't want to. And that's also not a look. Well, the important thing, Stephanie, is to really work hard on your physio, little and often, and and really push it so that when you're doing it, because I'm afraid without the effort, and that's sore and uncomfortable as that might be, it's unlikely to be really helpful. And I say that from a position of knowing what it's like. I hope you're keeping well, Jill. I'm starting my chemotherapy next week. Hugs to you, Alison. I hope that whatever it is isn't too nasty. Chemotherapy comes in various guises. Some of it is nicely tolerated and other parts are maybe less well. That's reasonably dry. So I have a medium cool vintage effect medium by Pentart, but to be honest, you could use a candle and rub that on, or clear wax will work. Yeah, the clear wax that has been sold to work with chrome powders by both Pentart and Slamperia will work. This medium needs a good shake, which is why you see me shaking it. And then we're just going to pop some of this in around some of the edges. It'll run every which way because it's liquid, as you can see, and that's fine. It's part of the beauty of it. And I can pick some of this up and pop it around, and we'll just give it a little bit of a dry, and we'll mop up some of this as we go. So this will act as it'll provide a resist, and as it dries we'll get a slightly shiny surface, and I can dip and dunk. And we're going to be repeating this several times, I'm afraid, because I'm greedy. I don't just want one extra layer of paint, I want several. So it's technique, and it's the technique that I used on the frame for the bigger piece that to tell you the other week. And there we are. And the only other suggestion for you, Alison, is to be kind to yourself. If you're tired and don't want to see people, tuck yourself in bed, don't see people. Remember, one day at a time. And there will be an end to it. And access whatever help you can get. So, you know, if your local hospice runs aromatherapy sessions or relaxation sessions, you know, you don't have to be terminally ill to visit a hospice, and you can just have a life-limiting condition, and that's in its own right will, you know, just do something for you in amongst everything else. But if the local hospices have got wellbeing sessions, aromatherapy, or any of all of that little lot, then I would be first in the line if I was you. Yeah, let's just pick this up. They're getting dry. So the physio bits, Stephanie, that you've got to do will be the ones, you know, essentially that do need to be done, and they will be helping. So I would suggest that whatever the rights and the wrongs of what's happened, you do what you can. There is nothing worse than feeling that you can't do things, is there? But, yeah, so we've got some mucky colours and mucky layers on here. Well, we might muck it, but you know, the lovely Liz Wheeler only saw the orthopaedic surgeons locally reasonably recently. Certainly in the last 6 weeks-ish, and was put on a list, and she's got her pre-ops this week, so quite when she'll have it done. But that implies to me that our local, the local NHS trust is under control when it comes to its waiting time. So that's got areas of that are dry and areas of it that are not dry. So let's go with Aviation Blue, which is a muted blue that works really well with the blues in the papers. So there we are, that's what we're going to do, and then we're just going to shuffle a whole mountain of that on there. And put that over, all over everywhere, and it will, you can see where it's resisting. So that's the product that I put on, is making it resist, which is cool, and that's why it works for the technique that I want. We might short circuit and not do we'll see how it comes off with because we've got that dark brown underneath. We might only do 2 layers and be nice to things. We might. If I don't like it, if it's not quite as shabby as I want, then we might. But yeah, you can actively see where it's resisting here, so that goes and can go onto there. And have I put more paint on there than I needed? Yeah, of course I have. There we are. Well, given that as a society we spend less per head than Germany, France, and certainly a lot less per head than the Americans spend on their healthcare, I don't think we do so badly. Elective care, I think, is a bit more of a problem, but I cannot fault my local NHS's or my local ambulance team's level of care for my husband. Outpatient care is slightly more difficult, but the rest of it, so I think it depends very much on the trust that you're in, and of course yours will have had been caught up with in the backlog from COVID, I think, Stephanie, because most trusts had the best part of 2 years of non-orthopedic operating. So let's get this dry, and then we can give this a jolly good sand. But before I sand it, it definitely needs to be dry, because otherwise we'll just end up with it sticking out. Oh, I'm sorry, Alison. So let me just flip that through, because I can. Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? And I suspect that means that you're actually not going to have, your chemo is unfortunately not going to be particularly pleasant. The headache with ovarian cancer is that there's a lot of space in our pelvis for it to sit there quite happily unnoticed until it has spread, which is a bit of a headache. So I just need to get this dry. But, you know, they're doing what they can, aren't they, to reduce your risks and to give you the best chance of having an outcome that is as good as it possibly can be. You know, the NHS looked after my grandson, who was diagnosed with lymphoma when he was 15, slap bang in the middle of GCSEs, which, you know, never a good time, is it, for a teenager? So I just need this to dry. And Liz and I are having to work around what we're going to do, because we have a retreat planned for June. So that might be slightly problematic if Liz is still in the throes of recovery from surgery. She says, throwing stuff around. I've got one more side that still needs to have a good dry. Yeah. So I had a conversation with one of my American friends today, and she asked me whether I was going to start streaming on YouTube, and I have to say I'm conflicted. I like the sense of community that we have within Facebook, the fact that we can talk to each other, the fact that it's easier to be responsive when you're in the chat. But I dislike the fact that the lives get downloaded, get removed. So I've decided I'm going to compromise. I'm going to do my lives as I normally do on Facebook, and then I will download them to YouTube, where I think they'll probably be easier to find, and put the link into my Facebook page so that people can find them if they want to. Okay, see, I've got a whole big thick wodge of paint here. My bad, because I put it there, but it's still wet on the surface. So let me just give this a bit more of a blast dry. That's better, it's settling. And it won't matter if we strip some of it off, it'll just be more messy because I haven't let it dry. So the areas that you can see like here are where the vintage effect medium has allowed the paint to resist that top layer of paint, and that's also quite handy. So let's see how much of a mess we can now make. There we are, you see that bit was still wet. You see. So let's just smooth this off. It's definitely easier to lift it off where there is medium than where there is not. And it's completely random because that's the way it went on. There we are. And I'm not having to work ridiculously hard for doing this. There we are. Excellent. Right, let's just dust the surface. There we are. And we'll see what else we can lift off with the dusting process. So I've now got definitely an effect that looks more shabby, more worn. And if I give it a good rub where the medium is, it'll come, a bit more will come off. There we are. So you can be very precise if you want. If you're using wax, you can be uber precise with what you're doing. Yeah, I absolutely, Karen. I will often use wax resist, but I've got the vintage effect medium, and I quite like the effect of it. It is definitely, because it's so liquid, it's definitely not as controlled as wax. Most of the guys here know that I am on Pentart's creative team, and so I tend to use Pentart mediums. Though I've got the stamp, but they also have a very close affiliation to Stamperia, which is, so most of my makes will focus on Pentart mediums and then Stamperia for everything else, because that's the request from Pentart. There we are. So do I want to, so yeah, so we've got that. So if I might just add another layer, because I can. Absolutely it's more controlled. There we are. And most, to be fair, most of that isn't going to get seen because I know what I have planned for it. And to be fair, I can be more controlled with this if I really want. It'll just take me a bit longer to get it dry and then do all of the different size. It's good fun experimenting with different techniques. I'm definitely a lover of crackle, and tonight I have no crackle medium, horror of horrors, on my desk. Almost unheard of. So the focus really for here, and I do have a collection of resin moulds to also paint. So we might be here a little while tonight, but hey ho, if you're busy and I have to go off, I completely get that. I make what I want to make, the projects that I like, and then worry about the time afterwards. So I don't necessarily plan my projects to last an hour, and to be fair, I think that my projects are the better for me just doing my own thing with what suits me. Let's get rid of the puddles. That'll run a little bit. Yeah. What are those faces for? The absence of crackle. I know, it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen, does it? And random areas. I know. It's just... And horror of horrors, my Life of Sunday on my own page doesn't have any crackle either, Jan, and nor does my one for Pentart for Tuesday. I know, something must be radically wrong with me, but it doesn't, so here we are. When they are all planned. I have to say that I have been sent by the lovely Wendy from Mad Hatters some new MDF designs. And whoever is watching my live on Sunday will be the first people to see them, because they're going to telly on Monday. Yeah. Yeah, but you don't, I'm going to prove a point that you don't need to. I rely very heavily on crackle and paper products. I definitely am a paper product snob. There is no question about it. I absolutely adore anything papery. There we are. And then we might not bother with there we are. Oops. The bottom for this bit, because a lot of it's just going to get, well, it's going to be stood on it, isn't it? To be fair, it's going to be stood on it. So when doing this layering technique, you need colours that are reasonable distances away from itself. So I am going to put a blue over the top of it, but it's a much paler blue. So you just need contrast, so you can see the difference in the layers as you go. And to be fair, wax would be probably quicker. My only worry with the wax is that if you then heat the paint to dry it, that you melt the matte wax, and that sort of defeats the purpose. But who knows? We all find techniques, I think, that work for us, and there isn't necessarily a right and there isn't necessarily a wrong in any of them. Just get this dry. Then we're going to have the challenge of cutting paper. I know. Who would have thought? Me cut paper on a live? Yeah. We are going to chop paper. Just need to get this dry. You can see the white blobs on the top, which is where it's not dry yet. I might just get impatient in a minute and give some of them a little bit of a mop so we can move on. There we are. Let's just give that a mop. Let's mop off the excess and grab some pale blue. So this is baby blue. So the joy of Stamperia is that they have a relatively contained colour palette, and they sell their paints in coordinating bundles at actually a pretty competitive price by doing that. There we are. So let's just pop these onto here. So Sunday I am planning on using rose parfum, so if any of you have still got some of that in your stash, yeah, then that's what I'm intending using. And I'm using dewdrops on the Pentart Live on Tuesday. So if you've got those collections, then that's what I'm intending using. Actually, let's just swipe off that extra paint off there and take it and pop it here rather than squidging out a whole mountain more. Right, excellent. Sorry, there's nothing worse than letting paint dry, is there? I'll tell you what, we'll leave that to dry, she says, if she can find somewhere to put it on top of the water bucket, because that can dry on its own whilst we then tackle my normal 3 tons of resin pieces. Right. Let me put the brain into gear and pick up the rest of the bits of paint that I have lurking on the side. So we're going to have a bit of a mixy-matchy colour palette today. Look at the state of my hands. You see, we knew it. We knew that I'd end up covered, didn't we? Of course we all knew I'd end up covered in paint, because that was just inevitable that was going to happen. There we are. Let's just pick up some smaller brushes. There we are. Right. Bottles. Blue. Brown. Rusty. Black. Black and brown. 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 Mixture. There we are. Good evening and welcome. So let's us go from there. So we'll have a take some of that binder. So I have cast my pieces with amazing casting resin. Any quick cure resin will work. I like the amazing casting resin. It gives me good working time. And then I have primed them with gesso, because resin is a form of plastic, and therefore you need something that will encourage the paint to stick. Though in all fairness, you are meant to be able to paint the amazing casting resin without priming it. I always do. And I've not had a problem. My pieces don't get handled massively, but they do last a long time. I don't have huge issues with that. So let's just take this and cover the bit that my usual finesse of painting, not. There we are, get a base layer down and then we can add colour afterwards. There we are. And I want a little bit of blue on there for the cups. Sort of looks a bit like liquid, doesn't it? And then let's just add a little bit of blue, pale blue onto there, but that's not going to stay that, and that's just a question of getting that base into there, and then we can go from there. And we've got a little mini compass, and that's not going to stay that colour either, but we'll add some bits. So no finesse painting for our base layer will get us there. That lot now needs to sit to dry, and I'm going to need another brush. So I have a brown. Good evening, Philippa. How are you, sweetheart? So this is red brown. There we are. Red brown it is. So that looks to me like it might be a nice wood colour. Yeah. So that's going to work for our ship's wheel even. Yeah, find the word. Find the word. We won't need to be. We don't need to spend forever. Because once the resin pieces are done, it won't take so long to put everything together. There we are. And as always, I do a reasonable amount. Well, I always compromise between what I think is a reasonable amount of pre-painting versus painting on the live, so people can see what we do. And I hope that my style of painting empowers everyone else to have a go. It's not difficult. I am not an artist. I have no art training whatsoever. I just play. So that's the whole purpose, isn't it? There we are. We will need a bit more of that red brown. Oh, how have you got on, Philippa? Have you been having fun? Let's just have a wee bit more of that with the lathe. See, the problem with pieces like this ship's wheel is it all gets, there's lots of nooks and crannies to get into, and then this is when I end up with horrible painty fingers. Yeah, the bigger pieces is not a problem. I'm glad you love it, and I'm glad that you're enjoying it. And we're going to be naughty today. I am not getting out varnish. Now, why am I saying naughty? I'm saying naughty because, you know, I normally would add varnish before I do things to my pieces. Let's just add in some of hazelnut. Oh, with some of this. And that might be a pot that might have to go in the bin. There we are. So let's just mix up our colour. So we've got a barrel. There we are. So we'll have that gives me a softer colour for the barrel. I don't want every piece to be the same. I'm not too sure what that is on there, so we're just going to paint over it and worry about it later on. I still can't, usually once it's painted I can work it. I think it was meant to be a label, but hey ho, it can be what it is. There we are. I think that looks quite a nice colour. And now we will be a little bit more careful. There we are. We might have to come back in and tidy up that blue, but that's also fine. There we are. And we're going to have a green bottle rather than a brown bottle. Or yeah, I think bottles can be green, can't they? Yeah, of course they can. There we are. But we'll need that to dry first. There we are. And I've got some waxes out. We do have some distressing stuff out, so there we are. Let's see if I can get any more of this hazel. Oh no! I hope that doesn't mean that you had a full-blown allergic reaction, Philippa. And is there a medical reason why you beyond the fact that you've become allergic to them, or is it just the drugs? And when you stop your immunotherapy, you'll be able to go back to having mushrooms. I love a good mushroom, I have to say. We do love a good mushroom. There we are. We might resort to dry brushing for some of the details rather than lots of antiquing tonight. And it will still look lovely, because we all know I like a good layer of multiple layers of things. There we are. And do I have blackout? No, I don't have blackout. Well, that was clever, wasn't it? I do have ombre though, which I think will work quite nicely. There's lots of details on these oars. I'm not too sure that oars in real life have lots of details on them apart from wood, but there we are. Okie dokie, so let us just grab well, maybe we won't just grab them. I think that can be going in a bin. That's okay, my bad. Mind you, it is almost empty. So that is ombre that I've just swished out, and is it a green? Is it a grey? Is it a brown? Well, I don't know. Well, it's certainly not brown, but it's definitely not black. But actually, you wouldn't know that it wasn't. And there's way too much of that gone out, and the lid's gone scuttling across the floor. So that's not good. And as we all know, I do happy dances when I throw stuff away, because that means that I'm clearing the mess. Oh, let's just get a little bit of that. It's not ochre, that one is sun yellow, but that's fine. So let's just take this and that brush, and then let's just add some of that onto there, and we'll add in some of that. So we're going to have a murky colour, and that's fine, because I'm thinking sort of rusty, a rusty anchor rather than a pristine anchor, but without having to layer 25 tons of products is what I'm thinking. So we're going to have a murky colour, and that's fine. There we are. You see, this is, you know, then you wonder why I end up with mucky hands. Well, there's our answer, isn't it? Because I pick up small bits of there we are, one murky dirtied up anchor. That will work. Right, let's pop that dirty brush there, and let's take that ombre and let's just paint the little lamp. Try not to end up with the light bit the wrong colour, but we will inevitably. So we're not spending silly amounts of time on these. It's more so that we have an impression of things rather than necessarily fully accurate, but they will still look effective in the whole piece, I can assure you. And this is definitely no frills, no fuss painting. There we are. Let's just get that into there. I will add the lines that are on the top of that, but differently, because it's going to be a nightmare to otherwise do it. There we are. Let's just pop that into there. Right. Let's just carry on happily. There we are. And the layering and the detail will bring it to life, honestly it will. They'll stop looking quite like blobs, and they'll start to have some extra details added in. There we are. And of course you can get out a one-head brush if you really want to. For me, life is too short, and it would mean that life went on for just a ridiculous amount of time. And we all know, much as I love being on a live, well, I do love doing the live, so that's not an issue. We all have lives. Oh dear, that doesn't sound good. That does not sound good. Allergies are not good. And the problem is that once you've been sensitised, oh dear, that does not sound like you want to be there at all, my darling. Definitely not. And I definitely don't want you being hospitalised again. That was pretty full on horrible, wasn't it? You were properly sick at Christmas. Properly poorly. There we are. I do have a plan for all of these pieces. I know I should think about it really when I'm doing it like that, but as I say, I'd always think about what I want for my project, and then have to think about whether it's doable or not doable. Right, this could prove a challenge. There we are. Forgive me for going quiet. There we are. Good. Oh, she says, dropping that. There we are. Let's just pop that onto that. So we don't need to be here for the next century, do we? No, of course we don't. Of course we don't. And I will tidy up some of that blue afterwards, but that's fine. Yeah, it's easier to get the layer down and then tidy it up than it is to try and we'll need to give it a good dry though before we can do that. There we are. Let's just take that down another layer. There we are. Not bad, not bad. That will do. Right. Let's just have a different green for that bottle. There is a label on it, but hey ho, life sometimes is too short. Okay. I can see that I've got areas of there that I've clearly missed as I've picked it up, and I've got a bit of white showing in that wheel, which will irritate on the piece. Okay, so let's have another clean brush for the basis of doing this light, and there we are. Okay. Let's just soften that through in the middle. There we are. Excellent. She says, right, let's just move that box over here. We are going to be doing simplified approaches to life tonight. Let's just get rid of that lot before I put my hands in it, because we know what I'm like. That will be the next move, on top of a straight down a relatively new top, because I put on a relatively new top before going live, so that's not what we want. There we are. So let's just give these a bit of a blast. I might try using simple waxing rather than lots of layers. Right, on here I think. That's okay. I do have some other bits I want to put on. Of course I have some other bits I want to put on. But hey, why wouldn't I? Because it's me. Let's just give these all a reasonable size. And I can see another bit where I've missed the brown, because why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you miss a bit? It's probably, to be fair, where I've picked it up with my fingers and wiped it off. But there we are. Let's just get rid of that bit and that bit. There we are. Right, that can go in there, that can go in there, those can go in there. That lid can go onto that, and we've even not got too much. Doesn't look like quite a crash zone. Right, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's just leave those a little bit longer. So let's come back to this house and give it another jolly good rub. You might find a rougher sandpaper. That's better. That actually sounds like it might be doing something. It's always positive, isn't it? There we are. So I will be able to see all of the different layers of colours that I put onto here with all of the steps, and it will have, I assure you, have been worth it. Right, she says, with dust every which way. So let's just clear that pickle out of the way, change that over and give this a wee wipe down. There we are. So we've got the layer of the nougat I put on, we've got a layer of some areas of the darker blue, the aviation blue there, and then we've got the pale blue on the top. There we are. So it just does allow you to do this, but you could do it, you know, each of those layers could be done with just a candle scratched on at random. There we are. So that's definitely an effective technique for just making something a little bit more vintage, shabby, weathered even might be the best word. Right, let's see what we've got lurking. What do we want to do? Because it wouldn't really be me without, would it? No, of course it wouldn't. So, as I say, ladies, preferably varnish them first before you do this, but we'll go for the non-varnish. I think that pot might go in a bin. So this is just a ochre coloured antiquing gel. It's a water-based product. It's permanent once it is dry. So I'm not going to let it dry because I want to wipe it back. Yeah, it's absolutely works. So we've converted that and we've now got much more detail in there on that piece just by adding that antiquing gel onto there. It just, there's lots of texture in the Stamperia moulds, and it seems a pity to me to not utilise that texture. Thank you, Philippa. There we are. Stamperia do a rust vintage patina, not that I've got that out, so again that would be an option. It's just adding another layer of colour into those pieces. We'll add some wax onto this anyway, so that won't matter. So I'm deliberately not taking it all back. Because it doesn't matter from that point of view. There we are. It just adds an extra layer of detail. So we now have some turquoise vintage patina. That's the Stamperia equivalent of the antiquing gels. And we have some dark grey. Okay, so let's just add in a bit of that onto there. We'll add some waxes in anyway, and we've got a bit of contamination between the two, and that's absolutely fine. So let's just wipe that back. That will help show that off and look a bit more like it's watery. There we are. Just easy methods of just showing the details on the moulds, and it saves a lot of heartache. There we are. From that point of view, let's just add in some of that onto here, and it will wipe back off the surface, she says. There we are. Will be much harder to wipe back out of the depths. It has to be where you can get into. But there we are. Let's just clear some of that off. There we are. And let's just take that black or the dark grey. Pop that onto there. Make this look a little bit more shabby, as if it might have been used quite a lot. There we are. Not quite so pristine looking is the plan. There we are. And then we'll find some wax. Getting away with it tonight. There we are. We'll need to find a black pen in a minute, because black pens solve lots of issues. There we are. I can put that stringy bit back on to there. She says if she could hold it still. It really needs to dry first, so we can pop that there for the moment and we'll let it dry properly. There we are. Right, eeny, meeny, miny. Let's just clear some of the mess. And this is when I regret having not pre-cut the paper, but I didn't, so we're going to have to do it. Thank you, ladies. So, but before we do that, I'm just going to stand up, she says, and grab the wax. I've just got some gold wax out tonight, so let's just add a little bit of gold wax onto our compass. We'll add some extra bits onto our anchor. There we are. Some extra bits onto our pieces. Again, it's just helping bring out all of the layers of the detail that are there. Cast in the mould. But in a non-complex way. I'm aware that not everyone is a fan of mould painting, but it really wouldn't be alive for me if we didn't have moulds to paint. And yeah, this is slightly lazy, but it's effective. There we are. Add the details into there and a little bit of definition onto the glasses. So let's just pop those over there out of harm's way, and then find a paper trimmer and some glue. There we are. Okay, so what do we need? We need a ruler. So that is 10 centimeters by 11.5, and that will be 3.7, 3.8. Right, okie dokie. So I have scrap pieces of paper, and of course I've forgotten the set measurements already. So 10 by 11.5. So let's cut that to 11.5. Let's get the text up the right way, because that's always helpful. Right, 11.5. 3.7. There we are. So 10.5 by 3.7. So we need a piece that is 10 centimetres. 3.7 by 10 centimetres. That's going to go at the top, that's going to go at the side, that's a side. 3.7 11.5. That is a side. There we are. 3.7. By 10. Let's get those in whilst the going is good, and then we'll tackle the roof area, which we might decide we're going to leave unpainted, as in a loft. That would make life much easier for all concerned. So let's just grab an ink pad. Oh, where's that gone? That's always helpful, isn't it? Oh, there it is. There it is. Oh, I think that might need a bit more loving too. And let's just add a little bit of brown ink around these pieces. Because I don't particularly want white edges on display, because that's never good. It's amazing how much you need for a little bit. It really is. I'm going to just put one piece into the back of here, so this that because it's my prerogative to change my mind, isn't it? So 10 centimetres, because this is just the way I do this. So this will fit in there. It's 10 centimetres, okay? And then I want the height, which is 4.8. Okay, 4.8. Okay, so that will fit into that space, give or take. Okay, and then to trim it off, I'm just going to mark the middle. So that's going to fit here in that place at the back. Yeah, I've just moved down the camera so that it's better in shot. So I'm folding that in half and marking that, and then I know then all I need to do is find a big pair of scissors, which I can't see, so never mind. So I can now take the folded area, I'm going to pop that on my cutting line, the other end in the cutting line, and chop that there, and then we're going to repeat. So that's where the apex is, that's going in the cutting line, that's the other corner. Hey, see, is that 10 centimetres? 3.7. And rather than starting a new piece of paper, the sides of the roof can be uncoloured, because why not? There we are. So that can go on the floor of the roof, and this can go on the sides. If it's going to bother you, then feel free to add in. So let's just take these pieces and find the glue. There we are. Good evening, Jenny. Thank you for watching. Hello, Jan. Good evening, Stuart. Thank you for watching. Much appreciated. I know this might be lengthy, so this is just some PVA glue. This one's by Pentart. Use whichever one you want. It really doesn't matter at this stage. You just need something that is going to glue. So choose your favourite glue and just go for it. You see, and these Tim Holtz boxes are lovely, but they aren't square. You know, because why would you have some? And each one of them will be slightly different. So I found you can't just write a set number of sides down. You have to fiddle and adjust it for each make that you do, and sometimes each side, because they really are very definitely not all created equal. Let's just shuffle that into there. Let's move that up there so you can see better what I'm doing. There we are. There we are. Make sure you've got the text upstairs up the right way, because that really would irritate me. There we are. Stick that into there. That can go in that one. She says, thinking that she might have lost a piece, but she hasn't, so that's good. So, glue will stick. Most of this piece you're not going to see, so, but I will know it's in there, so that's the bit that matters. Give those a little push. We will anchor those in better in a minute. Right, let's just give that all a nice squash. Make sure it's had time for the glue to grab. The glue is sticky, but it definitely needs time to stick to the surface. There we are. This will all be when sausage fingers become a pain. There we are. You see? Not bad, not bad. Let go up. There we are. So there we are. That fits reasonably into there. That piece can go on the bottom. If you wanted, you could cut out pieces for the other two sides. If it's going to irritate, then please do. I'm just going to call it done without. There we are. And give that a little squash. There we are. So those pieces are now all locked in place. Hey, oh, I like it when a plan comes together. Aha, that's what went flying. Right. So we're going to create a scene in the bottom of here. Let's move you on camera. Okay. So there's going to be some shenanigansing. We all know I love a good spacer. So these are literally just canvas stretchers. Okay, and we're going to add some extra bits to support some of this as we go. And we've got our beloved pin flare glue. I just have to remember what I had where and in these pieces. So I want some extra pieces in the bottom of here. Okay. So that piece is going to go there. That piece is going to go with another one of those underneath it, just to build it up just a little bit of height. There we are. So we've got three of those. pop that into there. Okay. That's going on the front, that's going on the other side, that's going down on the other side, that's going on one edge. Hey, so we like it when plans come together. So we're going to pop, where is our inky pad? Well, on the floor, of course it would be, there we are. So let's just add a bit of inking onto there, and let's just tuck that there for the time being. I know that that's going on there. Okay, so we've got lots of bits here, all from the die cut ephemera pack. Let me just pull all these pieces over, and we're just going to now build a scene. Now I know that I'm wanting one of my bottles to go into here, but I want a little bit in the background of there. So let's start to create. Well, that won't be very good for you. Let me move you down there, then you might be able to see what's going on. So let's take that half a shell on some dimensional glue and pop it in there, and let's just add another shell into there, and then we're going to pop good old pin flare onto there and drop that into the center of there. Okay, cool. So we now need to build some imagery into here. Okay, so let's just take another half, that's better, a shell. I'm going to pop that into there. Okay, and then we're going to start building our pieces. That one is going to go onto there, and that is going to go into there. So I want some heavy body gel. So there we are, because it's going to, this is a very irregular textured piece. So there we are. I'm going to tuck it underneath and layer it so that can sit underneath there, and we're going to pop our bottle on the top, on the wonk. Okay, now then, let us grab a piece of net. Hi Helen. So this is just surgical gauze, ladies, nothing more complicated. Okay, so let's just, but it looks a bit like net, doesn't it? So we're going to stick that into there, and I'm going to see if I can wriggle, because this down into the depths of there, behind. There we are. These will get stuck down, so I never glue these pieces to start with. I always just park it in place, but I do shred it a little bit like this. Okay. Or in fact we might stick some of that into the top of there at some stage. Don't worry, it won't stay like that. Okay, so that is covering my machination workings for here. Yeah, so let's just add some extra bits along the way. There we are. So that's covering that. It's all about smoke and mirrors. Yeah. None of it is about completely right and completely wrong. Needs a bit more glue onto there. We've got another shell from the die cuts. That can layer on there. And I want my crab to be in there. So let me just sort that out. There's the crab, and there we are. We'll have that so we can at least stand the box up. Yeah, because that would be good. Pop that there. We've got some stones and things, so let's just shovel them into here. And we've got another shell, so let's just add a little bit of. So Stephanie, I'm using the pin thread because it grabs that much more quickly. If I was using heavy body gel for all of this lot, it would all see where at. Yeah, that's been heavy body gelled. Whereas the stuff that I've used the pin flare with, it's sticky immediately. It's not dry. I can still move it, but it just is, you know, it's just more flexible. You know, it just gives it some grab for me when I want it. So there are some. The only headache with it is it tends to dry yellow, and that irritates me. Okay, so I think you just need to be aware that that's what will happen. So we've got these little bubbles that come with the collection. Now I will have a headache in a minute, ladies, because I want to I'll tell you what I'm going to put on the back so you understand the composition. So we've got some bubbles. These have all come from one pack of the die cut chipboards. And is it extravagant? Yeah, you could say it possibly is. Okay, so I'm going to stick that into there. So I'm filling up spaces now, ladies. It's all I'm doing is filling up spaces, covering things up. So in the die cut chipboard pack there is a life buoy. So let's just add some string to it. There we are. Would I be better finding some glue to go on there? Probably. There we are. Let's just. In fact, we're going to have to put some tape on here. So why stress and why make life difficult for yourself? You see, that's what happens with heavy body gel. You see, it just becomes difficult at this stage for doing things, because every time you move it until it is dry, whereas the other stuff sets solidly. So let's find an end of some Aha! Right, let's pick off that end of that. And stick it on to the back. So it's at least grabbed. There we are. Let's just pop that over there, and you can see, and we'll continue to faddle with this. You see, I knew it wasn't a good idea when I decided on this, because why would you make life easy for yourself? But this piece is going to be on display, on show, from the back, so do need to have it at least reasonably tidy. Well, that's not going to work, is it? Okay. So let's just pop that onto there, see if that will work. There we are, that will work. There, half hitch that into place. Okay, that can go over to there. And another half a hitch. And tie it off into place. There we are. Hey! Do I really create lots of sound effects when I'm creating? I apologise. There we are. We are getting there. See, that flipping anchor's determined, isn't it? Go on there and stay there. Yeah, why not? There we are. Anchor that with a half hitch. Pop that into place. Should I have inked that up front? Pop that over there. Anchor that in to there. And pop that over there, and then I'm just going to collar that one that's not sitting quite so nicely. Shovel that through there. That's going to then go on, you will go through. Link that. There we are. So we've now got something that vaguely looks nice, and I can then knot that off, she says. There we are. Good. Well, that looks reasonably passable, isn't it? For, yeah, I think so. We can cover that pickle. Cover that. So that is going to sit on there. Because I've got all of that texture on there, I'm actually going to use my pin flare. Onto there, onto there. Sit it onto there. Yep. Oh, you get more sense after yourself, so that one can go onto there. It's only going to balance on that piece. There we are. Up there. and I think I'm going to pop that there. On that. Okay. So I want some bits in the bottom of there. I'm going to take that off, Stephanie. Tilt that up so that hopefully you can see. And I could find some art stones if I wanted, or not, as the case may do. I could find some glitter if I wanted. And let's just add a goodly drizzle. Some of those will fall out, and that's equally fine. And remember, I said I was going to shovel a piece of that net into there. Straighten that up. In fact, I'm going to lift that off just while I do this, because it's my messing about. There we are. And then I can shovel a whole mountain of those little shells into there. Yep. Then that can go back onto there. Okay. So let's stick that on there. That glue will dry clear, so no sweat there. See, this is determined to be an absolute pain. Onto there. I'm not giving. I am asking quite a lot of it, to be fair. Okay. So let's just tidy up that big blob of pin flare that's escaping and is going to look untidy. So that's where the name of the project came from, was that die cut chipboard piece, for obvious reasons. There we are. Let me move you back into shot. Okay, and let's have a little tidy up. And I might well add some extra texture onto those raw edges, but for the moment that's okay. So I'm going to put on the other side this arrangement, just so that you know what I'm going to put on the opposite side, because it's a multi-sided piece, isn't it? But if I try and add this now, I really will cause myself no end of grief. So let me just add this and add my ink onto there. This is a really nice size, yeah, to go on that back piece. So I'm going to pop the doors, I'm going to add a little bit of wax onto here just because I can, onto there. We're going to pop our anchors onto there, and then I'm going to pop those at the top. This piece, along with some rub-ons, is then going to go on the side of the piece. So I will add that once the front is dry. I've got some extra pieces that I can tuck in, so I might well just add in some extra bits of shell, yeah, and some stone, because why not? Not across there, but underneath there, when it's sorted. So that, ladies, is our make for tonight, with that Vintage Effect medium, aka wax resist, whatever you've got. Oh, I've no idea. I always decorate all the sides, and that way I can have it displayed any which way I want, Stephanie. I mean, I've got more stuff in this house that I've made than I know what to do with. You know, it's not, you know, I create faster than the things wear out, that's for certain. Okay. So there is our piece for tonight, our little scene of the sea, with all its elements of the beach tucked into there. So I hope that you've enjoyed that live. Ugh, that's my hands really sticky from the pin flare. And I hope to see you on my Facebook Live on Sunday on my page. In the meantime, please, ladies, keep safe, look after each other, and don't forget to support your local stores in as much a way as you are able to do so. And in the meantime, I will hopefully see you soon. Bye.